Hey guys, today I wanted to show you part of the process of me making the first page of the second issue of my comic Get Busy Dying, which you can read the first issue of on my website for free, or if you'd like to support me financially, you can buy a digital download on Etsy. Physical copies will also soon be available on Etsy. You can check out the description for links to all of those things. But anyway, let's get right into it. I already did the layout, speech bubbles, and lettering ahead of time, so right here we're just getting into the pencils. A quick recap of the first issue. Our protagonist, Holden, had a medical emergency and after he was discharged from the hospital, realized that he was now a vampire. So in this page that we're working on now, his brother Matty is just checking up on him because he hasn't left his room in 3 days. Who hasn't been there? It is very worth noting that Holden and Matty are based on me and my brother Richie, both in appearance and personality. That's why Matty has heterochromia and Holden doesn't leave the house. Composition-wise, in the first panel, the location was important just to establish where they are, but after that, I really wanted to focus on the fact that Matty is frustrated with Holden, so we get closer to his face, until we get to the point where he's crossing his arms and then you can see his whole body language, plus the fact that Salem, their adorable little black cat, is also there. Salem is really fun for me to draw. Usually I'm not great at drawing animals, but black cats in particular are pretty easy as long as, it's got ears, it looks like a cat. When I make comics, I do like to work from a script. I think it helps me organize my ideas a little better, especially because I just really enjoy doing dialogue, and I like writing dialogue in script format. The reason I mention that is not because of dialogue in this instance, it's because in the script, I wrote Salem does the big stretch, which I feel like every pet owner knows what that is. Probably just anyone who's been around animals knows what that is. Not sure that I would classify what she's doing in this panel as totally being exactly the big stretch, but I really like the way that her back and tail curve. I think it adds some interesting movement to the page. Anyway, moving on from the big stretch ramble, in one of the panels, when I started penciling, I just didn't feel like doing Matty's hand. I didn't have the brain capacity at that moment to draw a hand well, so I just skipped it and came back to it when I felt like it later. I wanted to recognize that because I think it's really helpful a lot of the time to, if you're stuck, just skip it, move on, take a break, and come back to it later, and it'll honestly save you a lot of time that way. You don't waste that time just repeatedly trying something that's not working. Now moving on to the inking, in this issue I wanted to go a little heavier on the inking than I did in the first issue. I wanted to keep the style fairly consistent, but I've been reading Hellboy, and it's gotten me really into chiaroscuro. Plus I learned some stuff in my digital inking class my last semester of college that I wanted to apply to my work, because that's kind of the point, right? Obviously, this page doesn't even come close to being chiaroscuro, but it's a heavier and darker inking style than in the first issue. At least the way that I see it. I totally could be wrong. I'm really pleased with how Matty's face came out in this panel specifically, which is great because it's more important for faces to look good in close-ups. I don't have much more else to say about the inking here, so I'm just going to let the time-lapse play and talk a little about inspiration. I came up with this comic, not just this issue, but the entire story premise, a little over a year ago, after I almost died. I don't know what caused what happened, nor do I know what it was. I just went to bed one night, and I woke up in the ICU. Even though I didn't get a diagnosis or anything, I've been totally fine since I left the hospital. But yeah, that whole experience kind of inspired me to make a story that started with a medical emergency. And my whole life I've been really into vampires, and I've gotten compared to vampires a lot. I remember this lunch period in high school where my friends just spent the entire lunch making a list of reasons that I was a vampire. So obviously the natural thought progression there was person has medical emergency, turns into vampire, right? There are a lot of story elements that draw from my life, and then there's also a lot of elements that I totally made up. Like, unfortunately, I'm allergic to cats, so I don't have a cat. Plus, I have 2 dogs, and my dogs do not like cats at all. So, I'm also not actually a vampire, for the record. There's a lot of value in incorporating pieces of your life into the stories you write, because it's what you know. Like, Maddie and Holden live in New Hampshire, because that's where I grew up and where I'm currently living. Plus, having Maddie and Holden live in the middle of nowhere just adds a level of difficulty for some of their later goals that I'm not going to spoil yet. Taking pieces of yourself and people you know and putting them into your characters also helps a lot with adding depth and realism to your stories and the characters. Like I said before, Holden is pretty heavily based on me, which makes it a lot easier for me to understand his character motivation and come up with what he would do in various situations, because it's either what I really would do, what I would like to do, or what I'm scared I would do. There are things that Holden is going to do later on in the story that I would never ever consider doing in real life, but it's fun to think about in fiction, so there's also that. Me and my life experiences are a jumping off point for ideas, not a guideline that I have to stick within. As I'm drawing Maddie's outfit here, I'd like to mention that I'm not the one who came up with the way that Maddie dresses. I actually specifically asked my brother to tell me about his thought process in making his own outfits. I think that decision helped a lot in making Maddie not look the same as Holden, because I'm kind of in the bad habit of dressing my characters exactly how I dress day to day. Typically that means band t-shirts, some sort of jeans, probably skinny jeans, but not always, a leather jacket, a jean jacket, a flannel, any sort of jacket, I guess, either combat boots or Converse, and probably a chain wallet. It's such a problem that I have that I've had people not realize that I was working on different projects because the main characters look so similar. One of my very good friends who has known me for most of our lives actually pointed out years ago, and continues to point out, that a lot of my main characters just look like me. On the subject of that friend, they are also a very talented artist. Their name is Mac, and I'm going to put links to their socials in the description, so go check them out. They did this drawing of Holden. It's currently my phone wallpaper because it's really cool. And yeah, Mac is awesome. Go check him out. Now, working on this issue, I'm really struggling to come up with a title. I have a very, very specific idea, but I don't know how to execute it. So if anyone has a way of combining a reference to vampires and coconuts, please suggest it down in the comments. I want to make all of the titles in the series like vampire puns or something along those lines, but I have no idea how to make a vampire pun about coconuts. Now, you'll see in the first pass of inking here, I'm mostly focusing on the most important lines, and I'm going to go back in and add thinner detailed lines for shading and stuff. Still, there's some variation in just this first pass of inking. Like, I wanted to make sure that the inseam of the jeans had a thinner line than the lines outlining Maddie's legs. I just said line a ridiculous number of times in that take, and that wasn't even the only take of me saying that. So yeah, line doesn't sound like a word anymore. Anyway, after I finish with Maddie's hair here, I'm going back up to a different panel to add some background details. Some of those details are in the pencils, but most of them are not, including all the kitchen stuff. Most of those lines are not in the pencils, and then I'm adding posters and photos that are not in the pencils at all. I didn't feel the need to pencil those out before I did them. I had the perspective and the positions of the characters figured out already, so that made it pretty easy for me to just figure out where the posters and stuff should go once I got to the inking stage. Home environments are a great way of showing your characters' personalities and other little details about them. Like, that is a family portrait, and there's a poster for the fictional band Hellhound. I've come up with so many fake bands for my comic universes, not just this one. It's really, really fun for me to come up with fake band names and logos and stuff. In case you didn't know, I am really into music. My most recent video before this was me performing at an open mic night. So if you're into, like, punk rock or alt rock or anything like that, you should go check that out. I performed 3 songs: Pet Sematary by the Ramones, Baby You're a Haunted House by Gerard Way, and Joyriding by Frank Grillo and The Celebration. I really, really love how this panel turned out. I know I said that in, I think, the pencil stage already, but I think inked it looks even better. Just the little details in his face look so good. I'm really proud of myself for this one. Anyway, now we're just going in and adding shadows, basically. I think inking in the shadows is something that was missing from the first issue and makes this page look a lot more alive and less static and kind of tense. I feel like there's a lot more depth to this page with me just adding a little more to the inking. While I'm doing those shadows, I guess I'll just explain sort of a little summary of this issue. Holden's basically trying to understand what's going on with him, how he became a vampire, how to stop craving blood, because he doesn't want to hurt anyone. Meanwhile, Maddie is extremely worried about Holden's behavior since leaving the hospital, and about not knowing what Holden's medical emergency even was. A new character is being introduced. Her name is V. She is friends with Maddie and Holden, and she tries to alleviate Maddie's worries while encouraging Holden to stop being an antisocial hermit. I actually have a friend in real life who goes by V. They are not the inspiration for the V in this comic. I thought I would mention that because they are probably watching this video. They're both very cool, though. We're about to finish up the inking here, and once we do that, we get into the colors, which for me is probably the hardest part of drawing. I do overall like the color palette that I've come up with for Get Busy Dying, and I'm sticking with overall the same color palette as the first issue. Of course, with the same settings, same characters, it only makes sense to use the same color palette, really. Because I'm using the same color palette, I was okay with doing the skin first. Usually I would not do that, but I already know which color from the color palette that I use is Maddie's skin tone, so I didn't have to worry about it. I'm more or less just choosing an object I know the color of, going through and coloring that object in each panel, and then going back to the beginning and doing the same thing until the whole page is colored. I basically always color my comic pages in CMYK because I intend them for print. I mention that because I didn't really know the difference between color profiles until I started college. Not all RGB colors can be reproduced very well in print, so I just do CMYK because I want to print these things and I want them to look good. In Photoshop, there's a way to see if your RGB colors will be able to be reproduced in print, but as far as I know, there's not a way to do that in Procreate, which is the program I'm using, so just CMYK the whole time. We're almost done with the flats here, and then I'm going in and doing the shadows and highlights. For the shadows, I'm using a multiply layer set at 24% opacity, and the highlights, I'm using a screen layer set at 30% opacity. I don't have too much to say about the rendering. I'm just being mindful of the light source and the shape of things like Maddie's skull. And one last time, I'll mention that I really, really love how Maddie's face turned out in that one panel. And I guess I do have one last thing to say about the rendering and coloring, which is that I like to have a layer that takes the saturation entirely out, so I can just make sure that the values are different. You want to make sure the important stuff stands out on the page, basically. Of course, Salem is clearly the darkest thing on the page, and Maddie's shirt is basically the lightest, so I'm pretty happy with it. It means that Maddie and Salem are visible and contrast from the background. Sorry I recorded that in portrait orientation. I have no idea what was going through my head when I did that. But anyway, yeah, that was pretty much the entire process for making the first page of the second issue of Get Busy Dying. If you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching. Hopefully I'll start uploading a little more frequently. We'll see. I'll see you in the next one.